Hey, Happy New Year's, everyone. This is Chris, and welcome to episode 12 of the Soul Motorcycling Podcast. I know it's been a minute since we had a chance to hang out and kick it, but the last half of 2024 was challenging to say the least. But life is good, and it's a new year, and we wanted to start it off right. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a very special guest, Kyle Fitchhorn. Kyle is a motor officer and owner and head coach of SoCal Slow Cones based out of San Diego, California. Kyle's journey is a testament to hard work and determination. In today's episode, Kyle shares his incredible story and offers valuable insights, and we discuss the difference and similarities of being a motor officer and a civilian rider. We also discuss the importance of continuous training and not letting your licensing course be your only motorcycle educational experience, and how mastering slow speed maneuvers can elevate your all-around riding. And also we talk about the crucial differences between spacing on a motorcycle versus spacing on a car. Kyle will also share practical strategies to stay safe on the road and tips for enhancing awareness and performance. And as always, we highlight some exciting upcoming motorcycle events and reflect on the fantastic camaraderie that defines the riding community. We're super stoked to be back, and thanks for listening. Hey everybody, good to see you. This is Chris from Soul Motorcycling. I know it's been a minute, but we've been busy riding motorcycles all summer long. Welcome to the Soul Motorcycling Podcast. I'm here hanging out with my good friend Kyle Fitchhorn. Did I say that right, Kyle?
Yeah, close enough.
Sweet. So Kyle and I have known each other going on a few months now, and our paths kind of crossed via Instagram, and we'll kind of get into the backstory on that a little bit. But I just wanted to say welcome, Kyle. Thanks for taking the time to come and hang out with all of us and, drop some of your knowledge on us. It's good to see you, man.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys and talking shop about all things motorcycling. And I really appreciate you inviting me to be on the podcast.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks, dude. So I kind of know your backstory and everything, but with everybody else, would you kind of just tell us who you are and what you're all about, man?
Yeah, so I grew up here in San Diego. Motorcycles actually weren't a big part of my life for a long time, up until about maybe 6 years ago is when I started riding. I've been a police officer in law enforcement for over 12 years now. And throughout that 12 years, I always had the goal of wanting to ride motorcycles and be a police motor officer. So I finally had the opportunity to do that, went out, took the MSF course, got my license, kind of went through the different stages of motorcycling as a beginner. But ever since I got my license, I always kept practicing because I knew that that was going to be important to get where I wanted to go career-wise. And within 5 years, here I am, achieved my goal, achieved the dream, and I've been riding ever since and enjoying the hell out of it. Best job I've ever had. I get paid to ride a motorcycle for a living and get to do a lot of training, and from there started my business and haven't looked back.
Cool, man. So is that your bike behind you there? What do you ride? What do you ride?
This is my personal bike. I have a 2022 1250 GS,
cool.
Which is awesome. I love the hell out of the bike. It does everything really, really well. It's kind of, to be kind of cliche, it's like the Swiss Army knife of motorcycles, but it really is true. It does everything pretty decent, nothing too crazy. There's definitely better bikes for specific applications, but for a one-size-fits-all bike, the GS, I think, is where it's at.
That's manufactured by BMW, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure most people know, but for those of us out there that are, still kind of new to this thing, the GS is the pretty much one of the iconic BMW motorcycles. It's in the adventure class. People ride them around the world, that sort of stuff, but it's also performs well on the road too, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. Actually, you'd be shocked how well it rides when you're going through canyons and whatnot. And the RT too. We do some canyon rides for training at work, and the RT is no slouch. I think the RT is one of the most underrated motorcycles out there that people really sleep on.
You're still a motor officer, is that correct? Or yes?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Cool. And you said you're based out of San Diego down there and that sort of stuff, right? Your duty bikes. What's the correct term? Is that what you would refer to them as your on-duty bikes, or do you have a specific or something that they're referred to, just like your squad car or something to that effect?
Duty bike, work motorcycle,
Work
There's
moto?
not a specific term. Just, you know.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. What's this thing that you like the most about that GS? What do you like about it the most?
I think all the capabilities, like I recently got a trailer to start hauling all my stuff for motorcycle training, since I'm starting to put on some bigger group classes and whatnot. But before that, I have all the side cases for it and everything. And I literally put 200 cones, 24 12-inch cones on it, a case of Costco water, and I can haul it all to training. When I'm done with training, I drop it in the garage, and then I can go ride the mountains.
Nice.
I could go ride the fire roads. I could go do, whatever I want. And that's like one of my favorite things about it is it's just so versatile. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. Like there's enough space to go get groceries if I want. As a matter of fact, I think the longest I've gone is like 2.5 months without driving a car.
Yeah,
I ride my motorcycle to work. I ride my motorcycle at home. It does all the errands and everything, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that was the first time this winter that I finally had to drive into work instead of riding and it was just like I had all my gear on, kind of raining, like whatever. I'll make it to work or whatever. And then I opened the door and it looked like it was a hurricane. I was like, holy crap. I pride myself on riding every day to work. And especially doing what I'm doing, being an instructor, I think it's important for me to show up on the days that are less than ideal that ride. At least for my perspective, like if I had to ride, because we run classes rain or shine, right? If I had to ride it in the rain, I want my coach to show up in the rain on a motorcycle.
100%.
When I see him show up I'm like, all right, cool, this guy's legit. He knows what he's talking about, right? Well, cool. And you guys, your work motors are the RTPs, correct? The police version of the RT.
Yeah, I actually just got one of the newest ones. Shout out to my partners that let me snag a new bike. But we have the 1250 RTPs from BMW, which is awesome. Me personally, I know there's other manufacturers. We actually have a Harley police bike too that we got, but nobody rides it. It honestly just collects dust. I think for the law enforcement application,
right,
you can't beat BMW.
Gotcha. And was it like the new 24? Was it the Road Glide version of the Harley, or is it more of the classic Street Glide from a few years back?
We got one of the like classic Street Glide, like OG looking Harleys.
Yeah, for sure.
So
cool, man. How big is your motor department?
Not big at all, actually. There's only 2 of us, and then a corporal, and then a sergeant, so 4 total. So fairly small. Even for an agency our size, it's a little bit of a smaller agency. And I mean, there's comparable agencies that have even double what we have. But, it is what it is. And you can't complain because, again, I get to ride motorcycles for a living. So it's not that bad,
Gotcha. So let me ask you this, like being a rider and also being a motor officer, right? So I would say that you see motorcycling through 2 different lenses or 2 different set of eyes, right? Would that be a fair assessment, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
But what I do know from, being in education, there's a certain part where you can I can't turn off my instructor brain sometimes. Either whether I'm analyzing myself or looking at, watching other people ride and that sort of stuff. And it's not like I'm talking shit or being disrespectful. It's just, my brain is trained to analyze and develop feedback from what I see, right? Is there any difference, or do you, tell me about that difference of being a rider and then being a motor officer and how those 2 kind of overlap for you?
I think there's a lot of overlap, and sometimes I feel like it's hard for people to understand, because my job is not only to do like the traffic enforcement and DUI enforcement side of the job on a motorcycle. The other half of my job at our department is accident investigations.
Okay.
So I'm one of 2 people qualified to investigate every fatality that happens in our city.
Oh, wow.
And part of that comes with the territory is sometimes it's a motorcyclist.
Right.
Motorcycle involved crashes, whether there's solo motorcyclists or cars involved or whatever it might be. That's just kind of the nature of the other half of my job.
Okay.
So sometimes, I'm sure the motorcycling audience is going to hate me for this, but one of the best stops that I get to do and get out and talk to people is with motorcyclists. And I genuinely use that opportunity to try and connect with them and impress upon them the kind of repercussions that some of our more common riding behaviors have that they may not realize. Right. And if I can get just that one person to think twice before, they're hauling butt and going way too fast, or think twice before they're going around a blind curve, if they can think back to our stop and our conversation, and maybe they slow down and they avoid a collision, or, it keeps them safer, I've done my job.
Right.
It's not always about like the citations and all that. Being a rider and riding on my own time, and especially now being in the training business, I genuinely want people to ride safe. I want them to increase their skills. I want them to enjoy motorcycling for decades and decades and decades to come until they can't even ride anymore, And I think a lot of people don't see what we see on a regular basis as far as the accidents and the repercussions of some seemingly innocent actions when you're out there on the road.
Sure.
So I try and take those opportunities as like an educational opportunity and try and bridge the gap, because I was a beginner rider too. I did dumb stuff. I'm not immune to it. Everybody has,
Dude,
and
we ride motorcycles, right?
I'm no saint. Like, I've done stupid stuff that I was probably more fortunate to not have, any bad things happen.
Yeah.
Repercussions. But, you live and you learn. And, now that I've experienced and seen what's possible on motorcycles, and then I've seen what happens when things go wrong, that's kind of where I try and bridge the gap between work life and then riding as just like a regular rider out there on the road.
Sure. And I always tell people, like, if you got pulled over, there's a reason why you got pulled over, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, 9 times out of 10, people, aren't just going to be pulling you over just to mess with you. I always tell people to draw attention to yourself in a positive way. But I think that's cool, because, number one, your job is very, very hard. And, thank you guys for yourself and people like you keeping us safe us knuckleheads safe out there on the road. But because you've seen the worst of it, right? And like, I always tell people too, it's like motorcycling is one of the raddest things you can do, but it'll kill you too, And when you see that, you're like, hey, dude, you can make your own decisions. But the reason why you should not do that is because I don't want to have to see what I saw last week, scraping that dude up off the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's a super important thing to get out there. And, all of us that are listening and paying attention to, you got to be aware, dude, because this isn't messing around. I mean, it's one of the greatest things ever. And I do think that's what kind of makes us a badass, because we ride our motorcycles every day. But just be aware that, someone like Kyle pulls you over and has a chat. It's because he genuinely cares and doesn't want to have to call your mom or your wife or you tell your kids that you're not coming home, So thanks for doing that, man.
Obviously we got to get out there and learn how to ride better and control our bikes in all different situations. And we have to realize that there's big boy repercussions when things go wrong. You don't have airbags, you don't have a seatbelt, you don't have the protection of a vehicle. So you have to be right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And, people get really upset, but not to get too graphic, but I've literally walked through like a motorcyclist's brains, like all over the roadway because they went way too fast and missed a turn. Until you've kind of lived that, you don't really put the repercussions into perspective.
Sure.
And so it's nothing personal. We're just out there. We really genuinely want people to ride safe and get training and go out there and explore the possibilities on their motorcycle and their limits as well.
Right. So let's dive into that topic a little bit. This question kind of has a couple different layers, but I'm seeing that banner that's hanging up there in your garage behind you. Tell us about that. What's SoCal Slow Cones, correct?
It just kind of turned into a hobby with the local BMW club that I'm a part of, to just try and help the club members get out there and train. And I got a lot of people. I was actually really surprised. and people kept turning out and turning out and turning out. I got really good feedback. So in August, I actually turned it into a full business. And so now I host monthly public group classes. I've had a law group sponsor a private group class. I do one-on-ones. I run the whole gamut of motorcycle training as a business now.
Cool. So what is there, describe the skills that, would you say that you're teaching the police-based motor skills, like the stuff that we watch, all you guys, how you ride on YouTube and all the cool, Instagram posts and that sort of stuff. Is that the style that you're teaching?
Yeah, I would say it leans more towards that style. You're going to find some of it is actual police patterns that we use to train to build our skills. We'll do braking, we'll do swerving, but a lot of it is based and kind of derived from our police motor patterns and the things that we have to do to get certified to be able to ride out there on the road full time.
And if you were to describe it, I believe some of my friends have described it as code 3 riding. Am I saying that right? Am I describing that right?
Yeah, well, code 3 riding would be like with your lights and sirens on.
Okay, cool. Looking
But-
cool.
Yeah.
So just basic, obviously you guys do this for your job and you have to perform at the highest level. And it's the fundamentals and, all the stuff that anybody can practice and anybody can go out and learn that's going to end up making them a better rider, right? Have you noticed that there is lack of, with you bringing in what you're bringing, right? And my background is I come from the snowboard world, coaching world, I've done that for 30 years, train instructors, traveled the world, that sort of stuff. I kind of compare it to snowboarding a little bit, where like once you've taken your beginner in motorcycle course or once you've taken your beginner snowboard lesson and you can link turns, I'm riding my bike, I'm hanging out with my friends. I find that that's where the little the correlation of training and experience, like it's almost like the more experience you have, the less training that you do. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's like once I'm out, I'm riding with my friends, me and my homies. We're riding out, going for a rip out down the canyons, cruising up to Neptune's Net. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing it. Then you don't really ever give training a second thought. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, and I was talking about somebody else with this earlier today. There's a guy that showed up, and he walked in and he was pretty confident. He's like, I've been riding 40 years, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay, well, let's just get warmed up, and we'll, part of the exercise, let's just do U-turns. And every single time, he couldn't turn his head and eyes, and he literally just went straight through the turn.
Right.
Like didn't even turn.
Yeah, no, right.
So, it's that, we have a saying, it's like, are you a 40-year rider or have you been riding like 1 year 40 times over?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a common misconception. Motorcycling is not that hard once you get going. I could throw anybody on a motorcycle, get the bike going, put them on the freeway, and they'll ride until they run out of gas. Mm-hmm. That kind of builds a false sense of confidence. Mm-hmm. When you go and you put in those freeway miles and you just do that. And then you think, well, I haven't had an incident yet. I'm good. I don't need to train. Like I can ride. Mm-hmm. And that builds complacency and a false sense of security almost when you start doing that. And to really handle your motorcycle and really be, again, it's kind of cliche, but be one with your motorcycle. You should be able to confidently and consistently handle it and whatever the road's going to throw at you, whether it's slow speeds at 10 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, whether it's higher speeds at 70 or 80, whatever comes your way, you should be confident enough and have practiced enough to be able to handle yourself accordingly and, if not completely avoid, mitigate whatever the road's going to throw at you.
Sure. Kind of backtracking here just a little bit. This thought just kind of came up into my head that with the fatalities that you've come across, without we don't have to get too into detail, but what was probably a couple reoccurring themes? Like what were the main reasons that if a motorcycle is, we both know that you can still do everything 100% by the book. Couldn't done anything better. The universe is still going to get you because that's just the chance that we take every single day. Right. But I always say that us as riders, we need to own at least night okay, that's maybe 10% on what goes down, but we need to own the rest of it, as far as that is concerned. Yeah. So what do you, maybe 2 or 3, like, what do you see as the most common reason why motorcyclists cause their own accidents?
I'm glad you brought that up too, because motorcyclists, I mean, especially social media now, like motorcycle crash videos are a dime a dozen, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, oh, cagers, car drivers, they don't respect us. The reality is, like you said, 90% of those crashes could have been avoided.
Right.
Obviously, again, like you brought up, the universe is just going to do what it's going to do, right? Like, you can get put in an absolute no-win situation. You could be the safest rider ever, really good skills, the whole thing. And sometimes, it just happens. But the things that I've seen that are common, and this actually goes back decades, this isn't even anything new, but failure to negotiate curves, rider skills, a lot of it is like the motorcyclist's fault. The last 3 or 4 fatalities and accidents were guys going too fast. One guy literally broadsided like a semi-tanker truck that crossed in front of him, but he was just going way too fast to be able to stop. And it was a wide open road. There's plenty of time to see it coming. He just wasn't paying attention and going way, way, way too fast. Another one, the same thing. A very minor curve in the road went off the road because they were going too fast and couldn't negotiate it. On the flip side, I've had a biker stopped at a stoplight and somebody comes off the freeway and doesn't stop at the red light and goes through and hits them. That's right. That's the universe right there. That's something that you're probably not going to be able to avoid that unless you're just constantly head on a swivel. But a lot of it is rider error, and unfortunately, like, it kind of sucks because a lot of it could have been avoided with just a little bit of training, a little bit of skills, not getting target fixated, being able to ride within your limits, like all these things that we hear all the time it's true, right. And that's how you avoid accidents. There's a half a dozen people in my city over the last couple of years on motorcycles that would be alive right now if they listened to that and kind of took it to heart, and that sucks. So.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for sharing that with us, and I think, I work in motorcycle education here a lot, you're same, and what I've found is, and it's kind of how I think our paths crossed, you know what I mean? Because we kind of follow, the slow speed posts and that sort of stuff, and somebody had recommended, or it came up and it popped, I'm like, oh, cool, because I liked, because I like Nova and a couple of those other, Ride Like a Pro. I forget the dude's name. I feel bad, but all that type of stuff. Like, once you start clicking on something, so then our paths crossed, and came across a comment that you made about, I can look it up, but do you kind of remember what you said as far as, not letting your MSF course or CMSP course or whatever that introductory motorcycle licensing course is? I don't remember it correctly, but do you remember? Because I remember I responded to you after that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember exactly, but that's another thing is people go to that class, and I went to the class. I went to the same class that people go to, and I think people go to that class and they get it out of the way. It waives their license test, and they think that basic level class qualifies them to go out and rip canyons and ride on the road, and that's just the end of their training that they need to do because, hey, I got my license, right?
Yeah.
And that class, and I might get hate for this, but that class, having done it and seeing people that have just passed it, that class barely prepares you to ride in an empty parking lot. Like, it gives you the very basic skills to start and stop the motorcycle and get a feel for how it turns, but it prepares you 0% for actually going out there on the road. There is a lot of work to be done once you've passed that class before you're starting to build the safety and confidence and skills to be out there and be safe on the roadway.
Right. And I think that's the statement that I responded to, because I'm involved in that program, and I think that there's some, I didn't wasn't like, oh man, who the F is this dude? You know what I mean? Like, no, I was just like, I think what you're saying is really, really important. And one of the goals of this program, our social media, our stuff that we've been putting on YouTube is the educational piece of this, right? Side of things is to get, and I recently just went back to college and, I'm pretty good at the production side of things and all this stuff that I've taught myself. But in a way, one of the quotes that helped inspire me to go back to school is sometimes you need somebody to tell you the right questions to ask, right? Like if you just go out and figure it on your own. Dude, I've been riding a motorcycle since I've been 6 years old. Like that's a little bit of time at this point. You know what I mean? Like not
like 20 years or so.
Yeah, a little bit, about twice that, right? Anyway, and I hear a lot of people come through the class that say, hey man, I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. And so one of our goal is to, make the connection with our students to say, hey, and let them know you did good here, but this is sympathetic traffic at the end of the class where there's like a traffic stop sign simulated activity and that sort of stuff. And people suck at it. I'm like, this is probably one of the most important things because that just got real. And the thing is like what you have to understand is that, that was sympathetic traffic. We're friends now. We've been hanging out. Oh, somebody stalls in the intersection. Oh, you pulled into my lane. Ha ha ha. Not that big of a deal, but it doesn't fly like that out there on the road. One thing. Let's talk about. We've had this. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but I want to kind of hear your teaching philosophy because the one thing I do know with like standardized education for state certification, there's just one way. And this is it. I can't say anything but these words. This is the way. And it's almost that the program or the programming becomes the most important thing rather than actual connection with the students to the information. So tell me how SoCal Slow Cones, like what's your take on that and how's your approach, like how your coaching theory when it comes to training your students?
Yeah. So we've talked about this quite at length. And, you go to a lot of the classes like the MSF course and the instructors have the booklet. They read you the instructions out of the booklet. They demonstrate it. And then you do the exercise that they have to lay out a certain way, certain distances. And it's just kind of, you get it. If you get it, if you don't, like you fail, maybe next time type of thing. And it is what it is. It's a very canned training designed to fit most, like one size fits most training. My philosophy is that doesn't work for everybody, right? People have different learning styles. They learn at different paces. They might be a rock star at one topic or one skill, might need improvement at another. And that doesn't fit in that kind of training. So my philosophy and what I provide, you're not going to find any scripts. You're not going to find any set exercises. We can work on whatever you need to work on. And I take a lot of pride in providing a very personal and very thorough training program and training service for riders. And it doesn't matter if you are just getting your license or if you've been riding 30 years. I can guarantee you that you're going to learn something from training with our program and with me. And a lot of it too is not only the skills. So one of the great things that I've heard actually was from Quinn Rediker, but he had brought up that motorcycling is skills and awareness. You have to have both of those to be effective and to be a good rider, especially on the street. You can be the most skilled rider and have all the skills in the world and be an absolute rock star on a bike, but if you're just completely aloof and unaware of what's going on the roadway, you're still highly likely to be in an accident, right? And vice versa. You could have no skills. Say you just passed the MSF and got a leader bike, and you might be super hyper vigilant and totally aware of everything that's going on around you. You might see a hazard or you might see that car that's pulling out in front of you, but you don't have the skills to avoid it, right? And so my training and a big part of our program and what we do is we build both of those. Okay. We're going to get out there. We're going to build skills. We're going to do the exercises. We're going to do braking. We're going to do swerving. We're going to work on low speed handling. We're going to get you braking up to 40 miles an hour, right? We're going to get you swerving at 30 miles an hour. We're going to use real world speeds for our exercises because braking at 20 miles an hour, how often do we ride at 20 miles an hour?
on your way to
Yeah.
40, right?
That's not even a residential speed limit, right? So it's good that you're getting out there and practicing, but 20 miles an hour and 40 miles an hour is a lot different when we're talking about applying skills. So we're going to do that and apply things that will apply to the real world. But the other part of it is when we take breaks, I do more of like an active break where we're still learning, right? So people can get water, they can get snacks, but we're going to huddle up. I have a whiteboard I break out and I take my collision investigation knowledge and we talk about perception and reaction times. We talk about braking distances. We talk about how to lane split safely. We talk about surface appraisals. We talk about all these different things that other training programs will never, ever, ever, ever mention.
That's cool.
And I break it down so people can really think about it. You know, I say, hey, 40 miles an hour, here's your perception and reaction time. Here's the distance that you're covering from the time that you see something to when you even start reacting. And then we have to add on braking distances. You know, for example, at 40 miles an hour, you're going like 250 feet from the time that you perceive a threat to the time that you're able to stop and brake.
Right.
So you're almost the entire length of a football field.
Right.
And
I think, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
Well, no worries. And then sometimes, you know, putting it into perspective like that and doing the math on the whiteboard and showing people that is very eye-opening. And people have been riding for decades and they're like, nobody's ever said that. Nobody's ever put it into perspective like that. And then we break it down, like, what does this mean for the real world? It means we got to keep our head up. We need to be scanning for hazards. Here's how we do that, you know, and we get into that. And that is our break time when you come and train with me. Cool. So your training is there. We're always either riding or we're learning, and you're going to take something away from it.
How do you think the lane splitting video came out? Was that a good approach to it?
That was good.
Did I put up? All right, cool. Just making sure. I was like, I know a lot of people, so if I F this up, I'm going to hear about it. So as long as I'm just like, all right, cool. You know, that's what you want to do. I think that's really good. And I just also want to clarify is like neither one of us, like I'm involved in that program, you know, extensively. Like that's what my main job is. And I know I don't want anybody to misconstrue saying that is a bad program. It's shit. No. I'm shitting it's crap and blah, blah, blah. We're just saying that is the minimum requirements that the state of California or whatever state that you're in requires that you can ride a motorcycle legally on the road. And that's
100,
right?
Yeah.
There's
well, and I'll never
go ahead.
Sorry. I'll never say that like another training program is crap. Because ultimately if people are going and they're out there training, that's what it's all about.
Right.
Any training program is better than no training program.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't even matter what it is, whether you train with me, whether you train with somebody else, whether you go to the state-run training programs, whatever it might be, it's all good. And I hope nobody took any of that the wrong way because I want people to get out and train like period, you know, but you have to keep in mind the level that your training's at, right? Because I know Total Control offers like intermediate, advanced, like track days, like, you know, there's levels of training, kind of like there is with my stuff, right? You have to keep it in perspective. Just because you took the basic motorcycle safety program and got your waiver for the test and everything does not mean that you're now riding at like a high level or you're ready, you know, there's still training to be done. It's kind of like C's get degrees. You're at like C minus.
Yeah.
And you know, to really work towards it, you need to bump it up to B level, to A level, and then like work your way to 100%, you know, and that doesn't happen overnight.
I also tell people that, you know, I ride my motorcycle the way that it's supposed to be ridden, and you can interpret that however it is that you want to. Disclaimer out there. I ride my motorcycle the way, okay. But I also tell people that I've earned my right to ride it that way as well, right? Because I've put the time in, seat time, miles and miles and miles and miles, right? Yeah. I always tell everybody to ride your motorcycle every day. Like, because if you're only going to ride for 2 hours once a month on a Sunday, honestly, go do something else if you're not going to put the time in. So I think the takeaway from that is, you know, don't let that big first time licensing course be the only motorcycle education that you ever get. Right? And then there's different ways. Right?
100%.
What I have found too is a lot of schools and like your next classes have a tendency to be kind of, in my experience, have a little bit more track-based education and that sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody should go do a track day. I haven't had a chance to get to yet. Like I want to go down to, there's a have you heard of SoCal Supermoto? I'm sure you have, down out of Riverside. So that's my goal is this spring is to go spend a day down there with those guys, because that looks just like so much fun. I used to race dirt bikes. I'm like, God, this is a good thing, you know, that sort of thing. But how do you think, like, let's see, out of the basic skills, okay, turning, braking, or let's say evasive maneuvers or whatever, which skill do you think is the most overlooked? And I want to hear what you have to say, and I'll chirp in on what I feel is. So what do you think is like the least practiced or the most overlooked out of those important skills? You know, turning, evasive maneuvers, other stuff. But you see where I'm going, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, because they're all important. But if I had to say one, based upon the accidents that I've seen and the experiences that I've had, it's probably being able to turn your bike and not get target fixated, and your head and eyes looking where you want to go, and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. I think that I agree with you on that. And then from another perspective is I think that people's stopping distance and their spacing that they have out there, that kind of, you're right, this all ties in together. And when I teach my class, I'm like, listen, I'm going to say a whole lot of smart ass shit, but there is like, that's just me. That's just how I remember it and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of truth to the backup of what I'm saying, right? So I ask, especially people that have some experience, I'm like, all right, cool. How fast is your motorcycle going? And I'm like, everybody says, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. I know how fast my Harley goes. I know how fast my Bonneville goes. I know how fast my Ducati goes, right? And then I'll flip it on. I'm like, all right, cool. And everybody's starting to brag a little bit. Yeah, I went 100, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, cool. How quick can you can you tell me to the foot how quick you can stop from that speed? And everybody's like, I'm like, shit, dude, can you tell me to the foot how quick you could stop at 45 miles an hour? And they're like, I said, do you even have an idea? He's like, yeah, about. I said, you know, if you're in a situation where you need the skills and you're about close, well, you could about be dead too. you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and, you know, I think that also one thing that I've noticed, and this is just for myself kind of coming up through, you know, revelations that I've had on my own, is that number one, we drive too close to each other out there on the roads. You know what I mean? And, you know, most people have what, two to three car lengths from in front of them, you know, cruising out down the freeway, rush hour, a lot closer than you do. And we spent so much time in our car. And then when we're new to riding, we ride our bike with car spacing rather than motorcycle spacing. You know what I mean? Like, if I know at 45 miles an hour, it's going to take me about 27 and a half feet to come to a complete stop, I'm always trying to have 30 feet in front of me, or at least, or if not more. And if that isn't possible, then I know where my escape route is going to be, and that kind of stuff too. So, how do you think that these skills that, you know, are a derivative or originate in the police motor training, how's that going to make us better riders out on the road? How do you think, like, instead of going from track-based stuff, because you can ride on a track, but you can't necessarily, like, there's some skills will translate to on the road, and just some of the training will, but riding on the track and riding on the road are two separate things. So I see, long-winded question here. How does slowing everything down, how does that help us ride faster, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and I think it's such a common misconception, and I see it all the time on the videos that I post, is everything that we practice in a parking lot, it relates some way to riding out there on the street. There's a reason why the California Peace Officer Standards of Training, their motorcycle training program that every officer has to pass, there's a reason why there's exercises in there. It's because that's what's been proven and effective over decades of building a baseline level of skills to be able to go out there for 40 plus hours a week and ride safely and reduce accidents. Obviously, you know, officers crash too, but for the amount of riding that we do, you don't hear about cops crashing that much. And there's a reason why, you know, between the awareness and the skill building and the constant training that we're doing.
So that's all good.
Everything that we practice relates to the real world. I actually just posted a video and I had, the quintessential, well, I've never seen a cone pattern. I've never had to turn like that. And I've been riding for 41 years. Comment on my video. It's not that you're going to run into cone patterns just popping up in the middle of the roadway, like out there on the freeway.
All right.
Never going to happen. I'll tell you that right now. It's never going to happen. But it's what we're doing to be able to ride through those cone patterns and those skills. That's what's going to apply to the real world, right? So one of the say, for example, target fixation, right? One of the big causes of people crashing on motorcycles. You get target fixated on the car that pulls out in front of you. You get target fixated on the big rock and the turnout in the canyons that you don't want to hit when you're going around the turn, whatever it might be. Well, to not get target fixated, what do we have to do? We have to turn our head and eyes. We need to look where we want to go, right? We have to look ahead of where we're going, and we don't want to look at what we're trying to avoid. Well, what do we do in a parking lot when we're riding cones and making turns and going through cone patterns? It forces you to turn your head and eyes. It forces you to not look down at the cones. It forces you to look several seconds ahead and look where you want to be and where you're going, and not just where you're at and kind of following the bike around as it turns, right?
Yep.
So that is immediately applicable out there. Braking goes without explanation. Braking is, you can immediately apply that too. And we work on, like, I throw a line of cones out, and then I put 2 cones out where you have to start braking, and I make everybody brake at those cones, and then I have like a simulated cone car right in front of them, like as if it pulled out. And I make them brake, and then I make them go around it, right?
Cool.
We do all kinds of exercises like that, and it all applies. And again, I practice trail braking. Like, I'll use the front brake at 7, 8, 10 miles an hour, and I'll trail brake through cone patterns. That's immediately applicable if you're going to go out there and rip canyons on your sport bike. But again, that's something that we can practice in the parking lot. If you can trail brake smooth enough to not drop your bike and tuck the front wheel at 10 miles an hour, it's going to be so easy when you're going 60.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So we're working on our head and eyes, which avoids target fixation. We're working on smooth inputs on our controls, our brake, our throttle, our clutch. We work on body position, although it's different than when you're riding at speed. But all of these things apply to what we're doing on the road. And it's not that you're going to expect to go out there and find cones on the roadway. It's the skills that you have to use to be able to accomplish those is what you're going to use. And I like to build all of my exercises around the real world. So I start off with U-turns and circles and everything at 24 feet.
Right.
And the reason why is because your average 2-lane roadway is about 24 feet wide.
Right.
And that doesn't account for sand and gravel and anything else that might be on either side that might take, 2, 3, 4 feet off of that. So I always tell people, if you come around the corner, like out here in San Diego and East County, we have cattle that roam like out in the mountains and stuff, right? So if you come around a corner and there's a bunch of cows on the road, what do you need to do? Well, first you need to brake. And 2, you probably need to make a U-turn and get out of the way before somebody else comes around that corner and pancakes you. If you just sit there in the middle of the road and you're just waiting to get smashed from behind.
Yeah.
Or
I agree.
you ride and, I don't know, car's blocking the road, or car pulls out in front of you, there's no way to go around it. Maybe you U-turn, or a tree falls across the road. It could be any number of scenarios.
Right.
And why, at the very basic level, why not want to control your motorcycle and just be a great rider?
Yeah.
People spend $30,000, $40,000 on a bike, and they won't spend $500 to learn how to ride it and handle it. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say that, and especially us in our Harley world and that sort of stuff. I tell people, like, dude, don't be that dude that has to ride around the block because you're afraid to make a U-turn. You know what I mean? And like, you don't want to roll up to the spot. Like, I don't give a shit how dope your road glide is. If you can't turn around and you have to do the 18-point duck walk turn to get into a parking spot. You just lost all cool, like, whatever.
it blows my mind. You know, I see people roll up to like bike nights, and sometimes they have to work overtime at like special events at the dealers. And I see guys roll up beautiful bikes. You could tell they put a lot of money into it, like awesome looking bike, all custom and everything. And they roll up to the parking lot and they're like revving their engine as they're walking their bike around to like make a U-turn. I'm like, dude, you don't, like, maybe some people think you're cool, but you kind of look like a doofus. But you're not fooling anybody with the engine revving. It still doesn't make it cool that you're walking your bike around a parking lot, you know? And it's just, I also like the challenge, you know, of trying out new cone patterns and just seeing and pushing my limits and finding the limits of my bike and myself. And there's no better place to do that than just an empty parking lot. Right. You know, because then I know, like, hey, here's where my pave's going to start scraping. Here's where I don't feel comfortable. And you're just learning yourself and your bike, you know. And so when you get surprised out on the road, when there's a legitimate scenario, you've already been there and you already know what your capabilities are. You already know how your bike's going to handle, and you're just that much more prepared for it.
Absolutely. And, dude, it's funny, like, you know, we've been friends for just, you know, not very long. And some of the stuff that you said, I mean, and I feel like, dude, I'm laughing inside. It's like, dude, I say the exact same stuff. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you started talking about how wide the lane is and that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? So it's kind of cool that I know that we're, you know, very similar mindset when it comes to this. You on one side of the education field, me on the other side. So we're kind of like bringing the bridging the gap there. How, if SoCal Slow Cones, to find your schedule, where you're running your courses and that all that kind of stuff, and if we want to follow you on Instagram and that kind of thing, it's all at SoCal Slow Cones. Is that correct?
Yeah, right now I'm on Instagram and I post some videos on YouTube. And then I recently started a website. So I have a website now, SoCalSlowCones.com. All right. And if you cruise on by there, there's a little bit more about me and our training. And I post all of our training days and locations and times and any other events that we go to. Sometimes we go to events and set up a booth, but everything's up there on the website. And then I usually announce it on Instagram too.
You were talking, you brought up something that I've, you know, in some of our training this year that we've went to and that kind of thing, the stats and the math behind it, you know, and I hear that a lot, like, oh my, like, I did not know that, like, that for me, I need that real context and that sort of stuff. So I want to kind of maybe pick your brain a little bit, you know, at another time, and maybe actually, you know, when we do get a chance to hang out and train, maybe shoot a video on that type of topic, or come on again and we can just talk about that side of a little bit more of the technical side of things if you're down for that.
But yeah, it'll get a little brainy, but you know,
I'm just a giant nerd that rides a Harley, dude. Like, I get it.
It all comes down to math and physics, really, when you get into the stats, and especially the accident investigation part. Right. But I find that people, I don't want to say that they like that more or they get more out of it than the riding part, but you can tell when I start talking about it and really putting it into perspective, like people's eyes open.
Yeah.
You know,
it's real.
People
it's
are just,
data.
It makes it very real for them, you know, and people can say, oh, you need to brake, you need to look 3 seconds down the road or whatever it might be. And it's not until you say, well, when you go this fast, you need 300 feet to stop. Okay, let's look around. Where's 300 feet? And when you put it into that real world perspective, it's pretty eye-opening for people. Right. And I think that's one of the things that you don't find with like a lot of training courses that I always do. And that's something that people, I think, really get a lot out of. And it really kind of opens their eyes like, hey, this is no joke. You know, I need to reevaluate how I'm riding on the road and what I'm doing, you know.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned Quinn. I had a chance to speak with him and interview him when he was up here at the Folsom Police Motor Competition. And one of the things about this and that he brought up is like the cool thing about training like this is, you know, track days are good, riding dirt bikes are good, but these are skills that you can literally practice every single time that you're on your motorcycle. In front of your house, in your cul-de-sac, in a church parking lot down the street. Like, this is something that can be done And I also like to tell my students that we need to approach this as with an athletic mentality, like we're performance athletes when we get on our machines, right?
Yeah.
And we have to not, and the physical aspect of things is a very, very small part of it. It's the rest of the mental side and that sort of stuff.
And,
one thing, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, just on that, and you mentioned like hopping on and just doing a little bit of training and everything and kind of approaching it with an athletic mindset. No athlete is going to go out there and just jump right into a 100-meter sprint, just full out.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you have to think about that. We probably shouldn't be hopping on the bike and just going and just ripping canyons at 100 miles an hour and just having at it. Every single morning, actually, the guy that I work with and ride with lives near me. So we ride to and from work together, but he's habitually late. Sorry, bud, if you're watching this. Habitually late. So every morning, I make it a point to go out and I spend 10 or 15 minutes in a parking lot and I just do figure eights. Figure eights. I practice overlapping controls. I practice trail braking. I practice balancing the bike and going at like 0 or 1 miles an hour across the parking lot. And that's my 10 or 15 minutes that allows me, before I even really hit the street and before I start my day, that's my 10 or 15 minutes to get out there and see, how am I feeling? How is the bike performing that day? And how are we working together? And if I'm not feeling good and I'm like, normally I would turn tighter than that, or my braking feels off, I'm a little jerky with the controls or whatever it might be, then now I'm mentally prepared, like, hey, I need to give myself more space on the road. I need to take it easy today, like, slow things down a bit and be a little bit more aware. If I'm feeling good, then hey, like today's a good day. It changes my mindset for the day, how I approach my rides, how I approach my work, how I approach whatever I'm going to go do that day. And it only takes 10 minutes and it is super easy. And it's something that, everybody should be doing the minute that they hop on the bike.
I agree. And I think that, to kind of bring this full circle, and the whole reason why Kyle and I are hanging out and talking to you guys is, after, personally as a professional educator, speaking with Kyle on several occasions and stuff, and just realizing that, hey, there's other people out there in this educational industry that have the same sort of viewpoints and thoughts and desire to connect with people to get further training, no matter what it is, and to change the culture of, I always like to say, practicing doesn't always have to be practicing. Practicing can be showing off with your friends and stuff, right? I mean, the guys that I train with, I don't think I'll ever live down riding like terrible, like forgetting how to ride my motorcycle when we were up and ready. You know what I mean? So that gives me more motivation. That gives me more motivation to train that. I know that this style, and I'm just going to call it, motor officer style, if you will, is starting to become, there's like little pockets of it. I know that there's a lot of, and we have the law enforcement side of competitions, and then there's the growing side of the civilian side. I know in places like Texas, along the East Coast, that's a little bit more, but we connected with you down in Southern California, my friend Andy from frictionzone.net training, and then stuff right out here in Vacaville and that sort of thing, are starting to see these little pods. And what I found is like the training culture, we're all very, very helpful for one another. We're encouraging. Like I know I have not had a chance yet to ride with my friend Andy, but he's send him a video of me riding, and he can give me some feedback. I know I could send you some feedback. The Godfather, our mentor, our head coach, his name's Casey Bokovich. He's based out of Reading. Like that dude he's legit. And the fact that he's our coach is super cool. But I know that I'm getting a team of people that now we're connected, right? And you're putting on an event, a motor event coming up in the beginning of May. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's tentatively on the books, on the schedule. You got some details to work out, but tell us a little bit about what you got going on down there. What's that all about?
Yeah, so that's the plan. There's opportunities all over the place on the West Coast for officers to have, a little bit of friendly competition and some bragging rights and whatnot. But what I realized is there's not a lot of opportunities for civilians to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm going to try and do this year, hopefully the first weekend of May, if I could get all the ducks in a row and jump through some hurdles and everything, is I'm going to start a competition down here in San Diego that will have the police side. The officers can come and run through the patterns and do that. But I'm going to open it up to civilians as well and give the civilian riding population an opportunity to come out and compete and experience it and enjoy it. And kind of like you said, like, you know, turning it into like a little competition with your buddies, you know, it's a great opportunity. And then you're like, oh, my buddy beat me last year, so I need to practice more because I'm gonna smoke him this year. And honestly, it really doesn't matter if you get first to last. The fact that you just went out there and worked on your skills, you're already a better rider for just having done that, right? And
dude, it's so funny because I'm sorry to be interrupt, but our coach Casey says the same thing. Everybody in this lane of motorcycle education, it's all, you guys all say the same. It's like, that's fine. Like you probably could ride better than you did, but it doesn't matter. You were still here, putting yourself out there, and it's a whole nother head game. I can tell you that much for sure. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you know, having gone to the motor competitions and competed now, there's a ton of people that show up on their bikes and they're out there watching, and you know, you see the videos posted on social media, and it seems to be inspiring. And I want people to take that inspiration and use it to fuel them to train and to then give them an end goal or something, you know, out in the future that they can work towards. Like we brought up athletics, right? Like you train all year for, say, the Olympics, or baseball players train all year to try and make it to the World Series. Well, I want there to be a World Series for civilian riders to kind of train and work towards, and then have something where they can demonstrate the skills that they've worked on, and, you know, have a cool, fun event where they can put those skills on display. And I'm hoping to actually make it like a charity event too.
Cool.
And find a good charity to donate some of the profits to. And, you know, it should be a good time. You know, I'm finding out there's some hurdles, and I'm not naive enough to think that it's all going to come together smoothly, but I'm really, really hoping that it'll work out and we could get that going, because like I said, there's opportunities for the police departments to compete and the officers to come out and do that. And it was kind of shocking. There's absolutely nothing for civilians down here to be able to do the same thing. And we ride all year round. Like there's so many riders. So that's
why I tell people, like, the best part about living in Sacramento is I get to ride my bike 12 months out of the year. Like, I can be down to the beach. I can come down, you know, out of 6 hours, I can be down to, you know, your end of the state. So we're hosting one here at the end of May. And then I know that we're working with our friends up in Redding that there's going to be, I forget when, I think it's September, might be October. It's kind of in the fall. So we'll have ours, and hopefully we can get some of the other events throughout the state to kind of jump in on us. But the one thing that for us at Soul, what we've tried to do is like, okay, if once we can get your competition on the books, ours and the one up in Redding, because it's going to be, you know, you see the same faces. It's like the circuit, it's like Supercross or whatever. But I came up with an idea that Soul, like, you know, this is the plan, is that Soul Motorcycling is going to sponsor the Triple Crown or the Golden State Championship or whatever, however it is that I haven't quite figured out what's going on. So you're going to have, then it kind of goes back to bragging rights. Like, number one, it's good. If you want to qualify, you have to attend all 3 events. So that's going to get more participation in all 3 events, right? You got to gather points and that sort of stuff too. So I think that would be a fun little bonus to that. And the one thing that I can tell everybody that's never been, even if there isn't a civilian part of the competition, if you want to see some of the best riding that you will ever see face to face, go to one of these motor competitions, and you'll understand, and, you know, maybe kind of change your perspective and open your eyes a little bit, and give our motor officers a little bit more respect out there on the road. Because I always joke around. I tell you know, and it happens to be a lot of the younger men that come through our program and ride a particular type of bike. I'm like, you ain't getting away, dude. Like, I've trained with these guys, and I consider myself a good rider, and I can't hold a candle to half of them, you know. And like, and I also tell people, like, if you want to guarantee to get pulled over, tuck your license plate up underneath your fender. You know what I mean?
No, it's a fun time, and and it's really what I think people too don't realize, and especially I see people, like I said, civilians out there, is those skills are attainable by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been riding 6 years maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been riding my whole life. I didn't grow up on dirt bikes. I didn't do any of this, and now I'm out here doing it. And I'm out there riding in those competitions and doing that stuff, and
Right.
people don't realize I think they think that it's some far-fetched thing that's like only attainable by somebody who's born with like skills to ride a motorcycle or something.
Right.
And that wasn't me. And I'm out here doing it. Anybody can do it. And that's what I think people need to realize is if you just go out and you put a little bit of time in, you can ride like that. And if you dedicated yourself for like 6 months and you went from 0 skills and you just went out there on the weekends and practiced for like an hour, like you could get good.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Anybody can attain that skill level. It's not, I mean, I have guys that come to my trainings that come pretty regularly and they go out and practice. A lot of them will knock out all of the police patterns and they're like good riders. And there's overlap too. There's civilians that practice all the time that are probably better than some of the motor cops out there,
right?
Because they're all about it. And it even, I won't get on too long of a tangent here, but it puts it into perspective. I can probably ride better than 99% of the civilians out there. I know there's dudes that could probably smoke me, but and that's all they do is train. But 99% of the people I could probably outride when it comes to doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When I go to like a motor competition, I'm like average Joe.
Yeah.
Like I am nothing special, like I'm middle of the pack, like so and kind of rider. But you know what? When you go there, it kind of re-humbles you and it forces you to check in and say, hey, like as good as I ride, I'm still not that great.
Good. Yeah, I don't
right.
ride
Yeah,
very
like
good.
I still have work to do. I still need to go out and practice. I still need to go and work on techniques. I still need to go and do these things. And it just motivates you. And then, here I am. I'm back practicing for the next one. Like it doesn't stop. And it shouldn't stop. It's fun.
Yeah. Totally. And no, I think it's cool. Like I said, I got to give a big shout out to, our personal coach, Coach Casey. Like that dude is like just the knowledge and, like I had the chance to meet Officer Guzman as well. Like Quinn, like everybody, like all of these dudes that ride at this level that are like, holy cow. Not only are they outstanding, excellent, some of the best riders that I've ever seen, but they're very welcoming. They're humbling.
Yeah.
They're encouraging. They're gonna break your ball. Like, yeah, you can do better. Come on. Like
It's funny.
But you know what I mean? Like the camaraderie, the help, the vibe, and that sort of stuff. And not knowing me from Adam, everybody was just like, okay, cool. Like I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Like you can do this. You can get better. And I think that's the one aspect of it that I thoroughly enjoyed.
And it's cool. I think, there's like riding groups and, all different like kind of cliques in like the motorcycling world.
Yeah.
But what people don't realize is, and I don't even really know how to describe it, but there's kind of almost like a bond when you get out and you start training. There's no egos. It doesn't matter what bike you ride. Everybody's there to improve. Everybody's there to work on things. And, like Officer Guzman's become a really good friend of mine. He's actually come down to, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 of my training days. And we ride together. We do like a little demo for the people that show up. I've worked with Quinn on an event at one of our local dealers. And there's no egos. If you're there and you're training and you're there to get better and do that, like everybody's all in. And everybody there is going to do what they can to help you and make you a better rider. Right. And it doesn't even matter. Like, obviously Guzman is, way faster than me, dude. Right? Like, but he might give me a couple jabs, but there's never any arrogance or there's never any like, I'm better than you because I win all the competitions. Like, it's, hey dude, try this. Like, this is what I do to go faster. Here's how I do it. Here's how you can practice it. here, whatever it might be. And it's a really cool kind of community to be a part of,
Right.
And it brings everybody together. I mean, at my training days, I have guys on Harleys, Indians. I had a couple guys on Gold Wings show up, BMWs, like sport bikes, like everybody comes. And then everybody by the end of like just a couple hours they're all friends, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see. So,
and I'm glad that you brought that up about like, you don't like, this isn't for just people that ride BMWs. This isn't for people that ride Harley Davidsons. Like, and I always tell people too, like everything that we're teaching is motorcycle specific or not. It's not motorcycle specific. It's just how we ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Gixxer 600, Road Glide Ultra, Gold Wing, BMW, this is just how motorcycles function and work. And you can do this anytime on any bike, and it doesn't matter. And it applies to all riders too. I mean, this whole aspect of training, someone like you, myself, who's put some time in, and we've earned the right to ride our bikes that way. But all this stuff applies to us just as much as anybody else. Everything that I coach people when I go to get trained, that's the same thing that I get coached on, right? So this is, I want people to know that it's universal. And I also like to say, it's like if you've ever had to take in a dance class, like you went to, you're doing line dancing at the country bar, or for your wedding you had to learn to do the waltz or something like that. You know what I mean? Like the steps are the same. The waltz has been the waltz since they invented the waltz, right? Now, depending on your dance partner, the experience is going to be a little bit different. You're still doing the same thing, but it's going to be someone that might be a little taller than you. Somebody might be a little shorter than you, thinner than you, heavier, whatever like that. So the movement, it's going to feel different, but it's still all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
That's actually a great analogy,
Thanks.
Like you as the dancer all the techniques are the same regardless of who you're dancing with, but the feel is just different depending on who your partner is. And your partner is just whatever motorcycle you're on. All the techniques apply to every single motorcycle ever made. All the techniques are the same. The feel is just different, whether you're on a Harley Bagger, a BMW GS, a sport bike. The techniques don't change at all. But, the feel changes because you got different weight, different center of gravity, different bike, like whatever, cable clutch versus hydraulic.
Yeah.
But that was a great way of putting it.
Cool. Thanks, man. Which, just side note, do you prefer cable or hydraulic clutch?
I've become a big fan of hydraulic.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't. That's a discussion we'll save for another time. I'm at least on the Harley Davidson touring models, I am not a fan personally. This is just me. I am not a fan of the hydraulic clutch as much as I like the more analog feel of a good cable clutch. For me, my what I have recognized is that my friction zone is a little, I don't want to say bigger or longer, if you will. There's like I can smoothly do it, and what I just haven't learned. A bunch of guys that I train with, they both have hydraulic clutches, and we talk about it all the time. It's just the abruptness of how quickly the friction zone engages on a hydraulic clutch. I'm not the biggest fan of. I prefer the slower feel, a little bit more consistent engagement of the cable clutch. But that's just me personally.
Yeah. I mean, I've owned cruisers. I had a sport bike. Like I've used both, and it's just really personal preference, just like whatever your motorcycle choice is,
Yeah, for sure. And they're all super cool. All bikes are cool. Everybody, just like dogs or whatever, you know what I mean? They all have, I'm a Harley guy for sure to the day end of the day, but even more than that, even more than being a Harley guy, I'm a motorcycle guy. So, and I think it's cool to, when it comes to training, is train on something, maybe take a training course on a genre of a bike that is completely opposite of what you ride as well, which is pretty cool. Well, sweet, dude. Like, what would you, any final words, any parting thoughts, words to wisdom that you could give to us to, until we get a chance to hang out again? What would you say? Like any sort of parting thoughts for those out there watching and listening to us today?
No, I know that we covered a lot, and I would just really encourage people to get out there and find some sort of training. Find somebody to train with, get your buddies, turn it into a little fun thing that you and your friends do for 30 minutes on the weekends or something. Get out there, start training, please. It does more than you know, and you don't realize that you need it until you need it, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
So get out there, train. If you need help, you can always find me. I'm more than happy to help anybody, even if you don't live in San Diego. And then just ride within your limits.
Yeah.
You know, and
I got.
so.
And how do we find you again? On Instagram and your YouTube channel?
Instagram and YouTube is SoCal Slow Cones. I do answer all the messages on there. You can also send me an email, socalslowcones@gmail.com. And you can also fill out a contact form or contact me through the website, socalslowcones.com. Any of those will work. I've had guys from like way down in Mexico send me videos of their riding. I'll just say, hey, work on this. I can see in the video that you're doing this. And, you know, they really appreciate the feedback. And then I'll get a video like a couple weeks later and it's way, way better. You can definitely tell the improvement. So I don't, it doesn't matter what you ride or where you're at. You know, if you can't find somebody around you that knows what they're doing to help you out, then I'm more than happy to. And you know, that's important too. Going back to like the 70s, the HURT study, there was a study done on motorcycle accidents. I highly encourage any rider to look that up. But one of the points was that 92% of the riders in the study that had crashed were either self-taught or learned from family and friends.
Yes. I was gonna ask you about that too. Just on a side note, before I forget, how like the people, and this kind of don't mean to be backtracking or whatever, but out of the accidents that you've come across, I mean, I'm assuming you probably came across people that don't even have their license, number one, but have probably had zero training outside of getting their license and that sort of stuff. I think. Would you agree with that? Like most of the people that wipe out have had zero further training.
I obviously can't speak to a lot of it, and that's not usually the first things that I'm asking them, but analyzing the collision factors and what went wrong, it's pretty evident that they didn't have a high level skill set or have training, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks for taking the time, and I could definitely, this is a reason why Kyle and I are talking right now, because I saw something, I sent him a message, he hit me back, and then we just started, you know, chatting more on a regular basis, and especially, you know, trying to promote the civilian side of this stuff. And, you know, just to echo everything that you said, Kyle, is like, get out there, train every day, do warm up. I really like the fact that you said you just don't go sprint, you got to go warm up too. Take 15 minutes, guys. It'll end up in 15 minutes every single time you go ride. Then you go ride and go be with your buddies, and that's totally fine. But like I said, I echo exactly what you said. Is please, please, please. I do, you know, look forward to working with you on some more projects and some of these educational projects. And then in the springtime, I'm looking at my school schedule. Probably when we on our spring break, me and the boys will try to come down and get, you know, do some riding with you. And if you ever find yourself up here in the Sacramento area, you know you're coming up, let us know. We got places for you, and love to ride with you. So thanks for taking the time, man. And I'm really, you know, I'm really excited to be. I can't wait till we look back 10 years down the road and says, remember when we would just the first time we talked together? Remember when this event was you remember year one of this event and that sort of stuff. So.
Remember, we were just a couple of goobers brainstorming on some podcast, and now look where we're at.
I know, right? Right. Cool. Well, awesome, bud. Yeah. So everybody go like or follow at SoCal Slow Cones. His YouTube stuff is good. His daily posts on Instagram, I find a lot of value out of it. And he's just a hella nice guy, man. Like not a whole lot of people would just reach out and say, yeah, let's come and do this. So, you know, if it's one of us, whoever, just like he said, get out there, get some training. So thanks for hanging out, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it.